I would like to start by asking you about your background and why and how you became interested in neuroimaging.
Okay. Well, I started out as an undergraduate in physics at Marquette University, and I was very much interested in the brain all the way through, even from high school. I remember reading the Scientific American articles showing like those first CT and PET scans and that were coming out, and that was inspiring. I was always interested in the brain, but at the same time, I wanted to study a hard science. I thought that the integration between maybe the two would be something that could be useful, although I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I could have been an engineer. I was potentially interested in medicine, but then I decided to go into graduate school then in also a biophysics department, but luckily it led me to more brain function research.
Great. What do you see happening with neuroimaging in your country? What kinds of research and what kinds of advances? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that the Brain Initiative is a big thing in the United States. It's also, of course, there's the Human Brain Project in Europe and other places that I think are really trying to step back and understand the brain at a more fundamental level, like the actually model it and look at it from a more mechanistic level. And right now, the exciting thing is in the United States that it's the Brain Project or the Brain Initiative is focusing on methods. So there's method development, and also I think that it's leading into sort of more modeling, and it's leading into more sort of an integrated structure where you can share data and things like that. But I also think in fMRI there's a lot of work on things like data pooling, things like machine learning, things like extracting information about individual subjects as opposed to group studies, actually trying to get more clinical traction from the data. So.
Awesome. What research or other contributions are you most proud of in your career?
Yeah, I thought about that a little bit. I think I'm really proud of a lot of things that happen from really good collaborations. I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time in the biophysics department at the Medical College of Wisconsin to be working with somebody sort of developing the hardware for echoplanar imaging. And I was kind of in the right place at the right time to actually get going quickly as a graduate student in doing functional MRI. And I'm very proud of the fact that we were one of the third groups, and I was looking for a thesis project, but we were the third group, yet I was able to sort of sneak the paper in, not really sneak it, I was just a graduate school student, so I just submitted it to MRM and magnetic resonance medicine, and got it accepted. So I'm very proud of that. I also feel very lucky because of that as well. But I'm also very proud of other things too. I was part of pushing the initial use of correlation analysis for fMRI data. I'm very proud of pushing the concept of embedded contrast in fMRI data, like multi-echo or simultaneous spin echo and gradient echo, things like that. Pushing the temporal and spatial resolution. But I think right now I'm also very proud of being able to lead a group and sort of direct a group, and they do all the work. I feel like I'm an enabler of things, everything from multivariate assessment to pattern effect assessment to resting state, ongoing task decoding, things like that. So I'm very proud of helping my graduate students do good things as well. One other body of work that recently I've been proud of has been going to very high resolution and looking at layer-dependent fMRI. So you can actually start to get inputs and output directionality in terms of fMRI activation. So I'm proud of actually being able to integrate everything from the acquisition side and the physics to the basic neuroscience, and also include the data analysis as well, so to try to bring it together. So.
Great. you obviously played a part in the creation of OHBM. What was that like, and what did you imagine OHBM would be like?
Yeah, so that was really exciting. So it's interesting that it first started out even before OHBM. Peter Fox had a regular meeting, and I think a number of people came together and thought this can be bigger than this, and I think that was exciting to be sort of part of that process at the very beginning. And there were a couple of things. Just trying to get organized and trying to figure out, okay, so we're going to have a council and we're going to have a program committee and this is what they're going to do. I remember actually the early days where we, back in, when was it, 2001 in Brighton, that's when we hired L&L. And I remember making a decision between L&L as the meeting management company versus another one, and we were like, oh yeah, I think we should go with them. And it's amazing what impact it had. And also there's things like back when the meeting was in San Antonio, not when it was a pre-human brain mapping, when the first one of the early human brain mappings, I think is 2000. I remember coming up with Council the idea for having a separate day for education courses and having education courses in the morning as parallel sessions. And that was very exciting. And I think as the chair of the education committee at the time, it was exciting and hard. I sort of had to organize every single morning session, every single parallel morning session for the next 2 years, which was challenging. Then Ed Bullmore took over after that. But so there are a lot of good memories like that. So the other part of the question is, where's it going?
Sure.
Okay. So I didn't even imagine that it would, I thought it would grow.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed at the time it was just another meeting, but there was always something special about it in the sense that it was united around the methods, and as opposed to just cognitive neuroscience meeting or neuroscience or ISMRM. It's about the brain imaging methods, and that actually really was effective for bringing the community together. And there were a lot of people who I think who've been to going every single year, and after about 5 years, everyone ends up knowing everyone else, and so it's become this really large, nice, extended sort of family in some regard, where we all kind of know each other and all kind of know what they do, and it's a good feeling.
The other part of the question was actually, what did you imagine it would be like, and is it actually that?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I didn't really imagine it would be. I knew it would grow, and I knew that. I thought probably it would go more towards the neuroscience direction, but I didn't think that it would go in the direction of the methods keeping on getting better and better. And it's funny because you don't really think about it that much, but I always thought the methods would get better. But now it's they're getting qualitatively a lot better, and they're becoming integrated, and I think that I also didn't imagine it would maintain the same cohesion as it did before. I mean, it was small and it was cohesive, and it's somehow has grown and scaled. Not that cohesiveness has sort of scaled with the times as well, and which I think is really unique. So I didn't imagine that. What else? I also didn't quite imagine that it would be as a respected. I mean, it was always sort of like this grassroots sort of movement of a meeting, but now it's like a really respected meeting, and people look at it as their main meeting that they go to, and I think that respect is that reputation is even growing. So that's also a nice thing that I didn't really completely expect.
What have you found the most rewarding in your involvement with HBM?
The most rewarding thing has been that we really did get to sort of invent it from the ground up. That was rewarding to sort of be able to sort of figure things out as you went along. But it's also rewarding that it really has been a catalyst for so many people to to really not only to make science more than just doing the science, asking the questions, presenting your paper, but rather actually having a real community, actually knowing the people involved in the field and looking forward to going to the meeting, not only to just give a talk or exchange your information, but actually to get a better appreciation about what's going on in other people's groups and actually catch up with old friends. I have so many friends now, and I think it's helped a lot with things like Facebook and whatever, but I have a lot of really good friends professionally that I find really satisfying. This matches this result, and that's great, but I think people need to also try to be a little bit more bold, because even the established literature, they don't really, I think there's a lot of room for complementary information, and I wouldn't be afraid to have data that contradicts the results, because everything is relatively new, and we're still trying to figure out what's going on and how to interpret things. So, and also I think another important thing is, the first is to try stuff. Second is just to allow yourself to be a little bit more bold, read the literature, and I would say the fourth would be to let's see. What has helped me? I had something in mind for a second there. Let me just think for a second. I think the fourth is also try to always think in sort of an integrative way. I think that and never be afraid of not being an expert. I think that, like I'm sort of coming from a physics background. A lot of people, the physicists who I work with sometimes say, oh, I'm just a physicist, so I can't really think about neuroscience. And I think that the people who really become successful are the ones who are not afraid to sort of think outside their domain and to gain confidence. It's interesting because I really feel more like a neuroscientist than a physicist right now. Even though my background and training and PhD were in physics departments, it's interesting how the tendency is to lock in and say I'm a physicist, but then for the next 20 years though I've been doing more neuroscience and processing and physiology and things like that. So I think of myself. I try to think of myself more as in those domains as I expand out. So to never limit yourself in terms of how you think of yourself. So yeah, I guess that would be my main piece of advice.
You're the editor-in-chief of a journal, if I'm not wrong.
Well, I just stepped down in January after 2 terms as editor-in-chief of NEUROIMAGE.
So how has that experience been, and what would you try to sort of tell the trainees who are looking into going into editorial jobs per se?
Well, it's interesting. When I started this work, I wasn't even thinking of getting into an editorial job. I just really. Oh, that's another thing. Maybe it's sort of related to another piece of advice, and it's directly contradictory to what most people say. I kind of said yes to everything. And I really think that we're all really lucky to be in at least I think I'm really lucky to be in a situation like this where there's so many opportunities. So I said yes, and I never took it for granted. I still try not to take it for granted. So I said yes to always reviewing papers, and I would always do the best I can reviewing them. And then editors, caught editors' attention. They said, "Oh, he says yes to all our papers, and he really likes to review papers. Let's make him an editor." And I enjoyed that. And so, yes, as you get older, it's probably good to say no to just manage your time. But still, I still haven't figured that out, to be honest. So I think that what I would tell people is. And when I agree to review papers, I look at it less of like, oh, it's a duty I'm doing. I'm like, it's sort of a catalyst. I read the paper anyway, so I might as well review it. And so I think my advice to people is getting into editorial work. It does take a certain mindset. It takes time. It takes a certain amount of confidence. in making decisions about papers, but you learn a lot. You learn about what's a good paper, what's a bad paper. You learn all the processes of sending back feedback and doing reviews and doing what a good review actually means. So that's really helpful, and it helps you write your own paper. So the whole editing process has helped me so much in terms of my own writing, and it also has broadened my horizons a lot, especially being editor-in-chief. I got 10 to 20 papers in a day that I had to sort of at least assess quickly to then send out to the senior editors. And so that gives you a very broad perspective and a very up-to-date perspective on the field, because you're given just the latest things. It's a good 4 months to 6 months before they're published. So that's pretty much what you gain, and maybe some advice to people. I think I would just say, I would say yes to as many papers as possible to review, and also I think it's important to not be. I think a lot of times I find this in journal clubs, but in a lot of reviewers are just. It's easy to find flaws in papers, and that's good, but it's also too easy to dismiss the papers as just bad because it has this, and this flaw. I think that I would recommend people be more. The goal is to help the author get it published. It's not to stop them, and so usually a reviewer should, as much as possible, look at themselves as trying to help the process if it's above a threshold, as opposed to trying to stop the paper from being published. So, yeah.
So, over all these years, has it been hard to manage work-life balance?
Yes. But I think actually, I think part of what's helped a lot is well, at least with my I usually there's certain things though, like I have to go running every day, or so do 30 minutes of aerobic, and that's sort of like an addiction anyway. So that's easy to maintain that balance. Mm-hmm. And I'm really lucky to have a nice, a great job at the NIH where I think I can turn it off when I need to. Although it takes a certain amount. I think to have a good work-life balance, you do need to develop a certain amount of discipline, I guess. It's so easy just to have your work spill over, and actually when I was a graduate student, I had no balance. I lost track of what day of the week it was. Most of the time, I'd be working all night. I'd just work whenever. But so now that I have a family, I have 3 boys and a wife, and that it's interesting. I mean, there's a need to compromise on both ends. Even going to a meeting like this, it's like a week and a half away, and all kinds of craziness is happening at home, but yeah, I do think that as long as you have a good schedule and if you compartmentalize enough, then it's good. But I think that's the key, to be disciplined and to do certain things no matter what. Like I know I'm going to go running no matter what or whatever. I know that I'm going to try to get a certain amount of sleep and to prioritize, and I know that I'm going to try to spend this much time with my family, and I make this mistake all the time. But the goal is to sort of really try when you're at work to work, when you're at home to completely focus on your home. And the more you can compartmentalize in a disciplined way, I think the better. It's easier to achieve this balance. But that said, I as everyone, I think I fail all the time at trying that.
So you've been at NIH for a while now. Are there specific challenges at NIH that other people would not be aware of?
It's NIH is a unique place. It's so good in the sense that all the researchers there have a certain budget, and they don't have to write grants, and they have incredible resources. At the same time, you're working for the government, and which is sort of a little bit different in the sense that there's certain rules that apply to sort of broadly to government employees that I'm still learning, and they still change, and that limit you in certain things. Like I like to think of it as if you're a PI and if you're writing grants, it's kind of like you're an entrepreneur because you can grow. You can build an entire empire of, depending on how successful you are at getting grants, and then you collaborate with industry. You could start up a startup company, whatever. At the NIH, you're a little bit more confined. I mean, it frees you to do other things, but you're a little bit more confined because you can't. There's conflict of interest. You have to maintain that. There's certain government contractors. Like for the flight here, I had to pick a flight that I didn't have miles on, whatever. You just have to because you're working for the government. And also there's certain, you have your budget, and the way you get approval, you're still, assessed scientifically every 4 years, but it's sort of like every 4 years you're assessed scientifically. It's not like you have a grant review or that sort of thing. So it's less uncertainty, and I think it's potentially easy to coast if you want to, but I think that luckily there's a good enough environment and there's a lot of really motivated professors and people that, I've been so well supported at the NIH that I think that without a doubt all the good stuff outweighs the sort of quirky stuff that's sort of government rule stuff. So. Yeah.
Great. I think that's it. I did actually have a lot of questions for you, but anyway, thank you so much, Peter,
Sure.
for this oral history, and I'm sure everybody would really enjoy hearing about it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.